Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Hot Mic Podcast. Hot Mic Podcast is where the divergent points of view debate and discuss hot topics. I'm Nate the Barbarian, your humble host. And of course, as always, I am not alone. Wishing you a good afternoon. I want to welcome in our panel, our crew members today. We got Raven Mundy with us. Happy belated to you, sis.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We got Tarris is back with us.
What's up, everybody?
Tarris the Terrorizer. We got Phil Heimlich. Sexy Phil.
Let's be honest, guys. I've been kind of carrying the intellectual load on this podcast. So I hope you were able to make it through Friday, without me. I mean, I can understand the challenge, but, you guys got to stand on your own
We
2
barely
feet.
made
That's
it
just
through.
how it is.
And of course, Kevin Aldridge, aka the voice of reason. How you doing, sir? Oh, we just lost you.
Oh, can you hear me?
I hear you now. Yep, there it is.
I was just gonna let Phil know that Friday's show was. I don't know that had anything to do with it not being here.
You coming?
Say it again. I
You're going in and
can't
out.
hear
You're
you,
going in and out.
Kevin.
Okay, can't hear me.
I don't think what he's saying, though, is going to be friendly to me, but I'll give him a chance.
Never mind. We can just move on. We can move on.
All right, good to see you, bro. Nonetheless, lots to talk about as always. Hopefully, a polite mix or maybe an impolite mix of topics that range from local to national to maybe even cultural. There is a link in the description. I'm sorry, in the comment section on both YouTube and on Facebook where you can essentially call in. You can use your phone or maybe you're on your computer at work. Or wherever your workstation is on your laptop or your computer, and you can sort of essentially call into the show. You can use audio or video, whatever works best for you. Of course, you want to see the full video and audio with you, but if you just want audio only, you can turn off your video, and you can call in your comments. Again, there's a link in the comment section of both YouTube and on Facebook, and it should be pinned to the top of the comments. So just before we get started, just want to say welcome in some of the folks who might be in the chat so far. Let me put the overlay up. And who do we got? Okay, we got Nat. Good to see you, Nat. And Betting Public Sports Show, a.k.a. Fame. What's going on, Fame? Anthony, what's going on? Ron. Wishes Raven a happy belated birthday. Good to see you. Staban's in the house. Good to see you. Ron D, good to see you. Casey. Shaba. Shahira, good to see everybody. Thank you for being here. Please hit us with a like and a share. And if you're on YouTube, we're on YouTube. Find us at Hot Mic Podcast HQ. So a lot to talk about. The big news right now, everyone's talking about the big blunder from the Trump administration. And Pete Hegseth, along with some other of Trump's security team, mistakenly invited a journalist from The Atlantic, actually the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, into essentially a group chat where they were talking about very highly sensitive war plans. The media caught up. I believe this is Fox News. They caught up with Pete Hegseth, who is the current Secretary of Defense. There was a lot of questions about whether he was basically qualified for the job. A lot of questions. But check this out and give me your thoughts.
One question.
Can you share how your information about
One question.
Can you share how your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic? And were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning. And you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used? And
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say.
Only it's clear that they were, and they made a mistake. But to me, he didn't even answer any of the questions. But what is your take on this? Should heads roll?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there should be some people who are fired behind this, starting with Pete Hegseth. I mean, the fact that, you're using an unsecured network to convey classified military information is laughable. And everybody who has heard about this has said exactly that. Everybody who is in a position to know about secure communications and maintaining our national secrets and confidentiality. This is exactly the type of stuff that everybody was concerned about when Pete Hegseth and the rest of the clown show that Donald Trump appointed to his cabinet, took office, were exactly these types of embarrassing blunders. And this is what you get when you get people who don't know what they're doing, who have no track record or history of handling anything of this magnitude. You get these types of mistakes, and it's just fortunate in this case that no American lives were lost as a result of this blunder. But who knows how else our national security has been compromised. I mean, these are the same people who went on ad nauseum about Hillary Clinton's server and her sharing classified information on an unsecured server, which, by the way, they never found anything on that, by the way. But these are the same folks who went on ad nauseum about this, who are using an app that you and I can go on our phone right now and download and use to communicate. It's a joke. Head should roll. And this is just another reason why we ought to be scared to death about the folks who are currently in charge in Washington.
Anybody else want to jump in there? What's your take, Phil?
Given the attacks on our free press, given the efforts to impeach a prominent federal judge, frankly, I'll take mistakes anytime over that. Okay? I mean, it's just, at least it was a mistake. Okay? The other things that they are doing, cutting off vaccines and emergency food to 20 million people around the world. I mean, in my view, those intentional actions are so just downright cruel and crazy that I almost can't get too worked up over a stupid mistake. I'll agree, but a mistake. But I will say this: what Hegseth doesn't understand is the American people are actually very forgiving if you admit your mistake. Okay, if he had just said, we screwed up and I'll take the blame. If he had done that, let me tell you something, people would have really respected him. But he was too cowardly to do that.
I'll piggyback off of what Phil just said. I agree with Phil 100%. That was a mistake that they made, and own it. Just like with the girl who hit the girl with the baton. Just own it. They made a mistake. Own the mistake. Throughout this thing, I appreciate J.D. Vance's responses to all this, and I, as a citizen, I appreciate the transparency. I appreciate being able to see it. Although it was a mistake and it leaked out and it came out the wrong way, I'm glad that it came out. I agree with Phil. If he would have just owned it, it would have been a better medicine for that mistake. But it was just a mistake, and I appreciate seeing the transparency. And like I said, I appreciate J.D. Vance saying I did not agree with it in the beginning, but then because J.D. Vance, he kicked back in the text message that I read. J.D. Vance kicked back like, I don't think that we should do this. I don't want to go to war. I don't want to mess around with Europe. And then they kicked back. We're sure they blah blah blah. And then J.D. Vance was like, all right, cool. That's what I seen. So from looking at it, I appreciate that part of the transparency in the text messages that I see.
With all due respect, I think Tarris and Phil are underplaying this. It's not simply a mistake. These guys are using an unsecured.
So you're saying they did it intentionally?
They did it intentionally. I'm saying that it's not you're downplaying it like it's nothing insignificant, like, oh, it was just a mistake. Look, This is a major. This is a. This
No,
is
no,
a.
no.
Wait, Phil.
I'm
Let
not
me
saying
finish.
that.
This
I'm
is a
saying that in
major. Let me
comparison to
finish,
their
Phil. Let me
actions
finish,
attacking
Phil.
the rule of
Let,
law,
let me
I'll
finish,
take a
Phil.
mistake.
You just said. You just said. Well, I'll take this over X number of other things. This is a national security violation. These guys are trading in sensitive, classified U.S. information over an unsecured app. That is not a mistake. That is incompetence. That is a violation of national security interests. And part of the reason why they're using Signal is interesting that a member of the media happened to get around that, because I think they're using this device as a way to get around transparency issues and creating situations where some of what they're doing is going to be accessible to the media and others. So that's part of the reason why they're even using this app in the first place, to try to take some of this stuff off grid. So I think, quite frankly, you and Tarris, by this is just a mistake, are underplaying the significance from a national security perspective about how big of a blunder this is.
I
With
think it
all
sends
due
a clear
respect.
message. I think.
Well, let me just say I am proud. Let me just say something. I'm proud to be linked with Tarris. So we
Oh, now
Republicans
you're a
need to
Republican.
stick together.
Oh,
So
but
I'll leave
I
it at
think
that.
I like the transparency as far as like it sends a message. Like Hegstead said, the only thing that I got out of that, he was following in line with what Trump wanted him to do. But he said Trump made a decision. We they made a mistake. It was transparent. I like to see it, and it sends a clear message to the rest of the world. We're not. It's a different regime. It's a different regime. They sent a clear message. I
There's
don't
no
mind it.
question about that. There's no question about
Hey,
that.
Raven, what do you think, Raven?
This conversation is so comical to me for the simple fact that we're having a conversation about a bunch of high leveled either politicians or appointees discussing very confidential and it's a matter of national security. They're discussing very confidential information on an unsecured app. That is the only thing we should be talking about. I don't want to hear nothing about I'm sorry, Terrence, but I don't care about you appreciating the transparency of being able to see the conversation. Phil, I love you, sexy Phil, but I'm not going to be forgiving of a mistake that was made. This is not a mistake. This is
Raven, remember that the word "but"
it doesn't.
excludes
It
everything that
doesn't. That's
follows it. It's the
actually
only
that's
word in the
actually
English
not the function
language.
of that
Does
word,
not.
but I'll let you have that. But what I
Okay.
will
All
say
right.
is
All
that
right.
the only conversation we should be having right now is how this is a violation of our safety as American citizens. They're discussing very confidential information in a very unsecured way. That in itself just it further proves everything that people keep saying about how unqualified these people have been to be placed in these very important and essential positions of power. Why are we talking about transparency? Why are we talking about a mistake being made? We need to be talking about how to hold these people accountable for the mistake. That's the conversation. What else should we even be talking about?
It's not going to happen though.
Yeah, and all this talk about DEI. Well, the last Secretary of
Right.
Defense never made this kind of mistake.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a
Yeah, he
low
never made
blow,
that kind
but
of mistake.
wow.
So
Facts.
yeah, I
Ooh,
mean, for me,
ooh.
this is exactly what.
If he had more diversity in his
No,
cabinet,
if
this
he
wouldn't
was
have
just more
happened.
qualified, it wouldn't have happened. Perhaps,
I know. I know.
like some mistakes
Yeah.
we've all done in the
If
workplace.
our Secretary of Defense wasn't a media personality, this might not have happened.
Yeah, maybe being
Because
the weekend host at Fox doesn't properly prepare you to be the Secretary of Defense. Whoever would have thought that? So
Hey, by the way, I got a question. I hope has anybody asked Hegseth if he actually has stopped
he's
drinking?
probably
Remember, he
drinking
said if he
now.
gets
He's probably drinking now,
appointed,
Phil, to deal with the
you know,
pressures.
I'm
Pressures.
real
He
curious
had to
about
he had
that.
to
You
be
know, I'd
drink.
love to get an
Somebody
answer to
had to
that
be
question.
drinking for them to be using
Yeah,
Signal to talk about top secret military operations.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think
I
they
mean,
all had a little drink.
I played that video for you. I believe that was a Fox News reporter who was basically trying to give him a softball question. Like she was trying to give him
Wow,
an opportunity,
that's
kind of leading
unusual.
him to come clean about it and explain it. And this is where I don't get where Tarris is coming from in terms of transparency. We didn't see any transparency. Peak Hegseth, at least up until the point we started this show, to my knowledge, is saying that it never happened. He's still lying about it.
yeah,
He's
That's
still
addressed.
right. He's still
That's not
saying
what he
that there's
said. No,
Yeah,
That's,
and he's attacking
hold
the
on, that was addressed to me.
journalist,
Let me finish that deal.
which is making personal attacks against the journalist.
The,
That's not the point. Okay, that is just an
it's just a way
underhanded
of
kind of
deflecting.
Trump-like
it's a
It's just a way
deflection.
of
move.
It's
deflecting.
definitely a deflection, but that's what for us. We should have to do our due diligence to find out our truths, and then as people who sit on panels like this, be able to say things that Pete Head says he's not going to tell the truth. We have to.
Again.
He's not
It
going to
just
tell the truth. He's not going to tell the
just
truth.
proves again that Republicans cannot be trusted. So when it's advantageous to wrap yourself
You're prejudiced. That's
when
your
it's
problem.
advantageous for Republicans to drape themselves in a flag and be all patriotic and beat their chest about veterans, when they feel like the political winds are where they need to be to put pressure on the Democrats, they love the veterans, right? But in this case, the real issue is that potentially by allowing these war plans to be put out there on an unsecure app, you are putting military personnel, the men and women who are part of this operation, you're putting their lives in danger. And Republicans are totally silent because they don't really care. It's just all about power for them and whatever it takes to get power. So
Good
we went
point.
through all of this stuff with Hillary Clinton, right? And she admitted, oops, my bad. That's what she said. But that wasn't good enough. It was all about stars and bars and the right thing to do. And you should know better. But now when it's Pete Hegseth, they're acting like on Fox News, like, well, it's not. It's just like when you mistakenly send a nude pic, a sexy pic to your grandma. Like literally, one of their hosts made that example. Like to your auntie.
Hopefully, none
I'm
of
like,
us has
wait
had
a
that
minute. So
experience
now
on this
all of a sudden,
podcast.
none of that matters. So once again, the hypocrisy of the Republican Party has been uncovered on full display. And if you really listen to it, Pete Hegseth, in terms of what he was saying, it was just a party of one. He's only worried about what Donald Trump thinks about it. So that's why he started going into the whole massaging Donald Trump's ego about how great of a
Yeah,
president he is and
it's
how
true.
things are different now. Because he
Yeah.
knows as long as he keeps Donald Trump happy, he ain't going nowhere. The Republicans are not offering any
Right.
oversight on this Republican administration whatsoever, to my eye.
And can we also
Yeah.
I just want to make
Yeah.
it clear that that man shot himself in the foot. Because the first thing out of his mouth was it was a hoax. And then the very next thing out of his mouth was, well, yeah, we are doing that. And that is what we talked about. And that is what Donald Trump said that he wanted to do. But it's a hoax. And we never say that. Like, it's the arrogance that comes with knowing that people will hear him talk and allow him to say whatever comes out of his mouth as long as it leads to the eventual ass kissing that Donald Trumpers expect of the people they put in office and the people that he appoints to put in positions of power. I don't have to make sense as long as at the end of whatever I say, whatever as long as at the end, the tail end of whatever comes out of my mouth, I'm kissing Donald Trump's ass, they'll be okay. They'll be fine. We'll get over it.
I want to
you
answer
know,
a question.
Hegseth.
Let me answer a question. Someone said, asked me about. It was in she asked me to explain about how citizens do your own research. Google search. Like you can't take what Pete Hegseth said for anything except what all of us agree on this panel. He sat up there and lied and deflected, but that doesn't mean we have to take what he says. Do your own research. Do a Google search and say, hey, can I get the transcripts of what they were saying? And then you can read through it yourself. That's what I mean by citizens doing your own research. We all can establish Pete Hegseth is going to get up there and lie and do whatever he says to Donald Trump. We all agree with that. So do your own diligence and find your own research. That's what I was saying.
You know, Hegseth just simply, he used all of the MAGA code words in there. Hoax, Russia. You know, he's just going right down the playbook of things that, attacking the media. Those are all things that are right out of the MAGA playbook that you need to say that will distract their base of people from actually taking in information about how incompetent the people that they support and they voted for actually are. They're playing to their base. They're playing to the base levels. So if you watch what Hegseth said there, as Nathan said, it was all simply a deflection with the loaded MAGA words in there that you need to say to distract and get your base and your followers to say, oh yeah, you can't trust the media. And I think it's interesting, a guy who worked for a hoax network, who essentially was caught lying and even talking about how dumb they believe their audience is, and even some of the whack jobs that they bring on their program to interview. I think it's interesting that he's trying to, besmirch somebody else in the media when he could have very well been talking about himself and his former employer.
Yeah, I mean, I think Raven talked about arrogance. There's a certain level of arrogance to do something like that on an unsecured channel. But again, can you blame them? Because they know that the Republican majority is not going to offer any oversight whatsoever. It doesn't really matter what they do. They can make these kind of mistakes. You're not going to hear Jim Jordan say we need to launch an investigation. You're not going to hear Marjorie Taylor Greene say that. They're just not going to do it. They're going to do what they're doing now, make mistakes. So, in that environment that they've created as a supermajority, this is what you get. They're going to be a little bit loose. They're not going to be on point as much because what's going to happen?
We
Right?
we have entered into a 4-year span of zero accountability. There will be nothing that a Republican appointee or politician or Donald Trump himself, there will be nothing wrong that any of them can do or say or be in a situation where we will see other Republicans hold them accountable. And I don't mean just the quiet Republicans that nobody's paying attention to. I mean the ones who are out in front of everybody doing all the most of the talking, like your Marjorie Taylor Greens and the like and so forth, and the Lauren Boberts and the rest of them. We'll never see them hold each other accountable in the way that is essential to making sure first of all, the American people are safe, because we just saw how that is in question now. We can all kind of agree that now we have a valid reason for that to be in question. We'll never see them be honest or tell the truth about what it is that they plan to do on behalf of any of the things economically that were promised to us or promised to their constituents or their voters during their campaign. Like the era of accountability is over for at least for the next 4 years, where we're not going to see it. And I would challenge any Republican listening to please, because it's going to continue happening. This is just the one of many things that we're going to see in the next 4 years. I challenge any Republican watching or listening, every time something like this happens, because this will not be the last time, I'd love to see you have just a little bit of accountability in your conversations about these things, because so far I have yet to see it.
Mhm.
What's kind of sad? It's kind of sad is that it's difficult to accuse Donald Trump of not fulfilling his campaign promises. I mean, the truth is, most of what he's done, most of it, he said he was going to do. And people didn't care or didn't listen or they still went ahead and supported him. And so, in some ways, we all, or at least those who voted for him and support him, deserve blame, because he is deporting mass. He's doing mass deportations. He is trying to stop CBS from getting their license renewed. He's doing just what it, and he's friendly to Putin, which he always was open about. So, in a way, it's kind of sad that he did fulfill so far his
Yeah,
promises.
that's an interesting point. I'm gonna come back to that at the end of the show, Phil. I'm glad you made that point, but let me move on here. So, next topic. There's an interesting poll I came across this past week, and the respondents, I believe it was a Democrat poll, they were asked as to who they'd like to see. And again, it's real early, like we're 4 years in, or is it too early? I mean, maybe Donald Trump has reset the mold in terms of the runway for a presidential bid. Maybe it's 4 years now, but um, in this poll, respondents overwhelmingly said that they would like to see Kamala Harris, former vice president under Joe Biden, run again in 2028. I believe in the poll, it was 36% of the respondents said Kamala Harris. Nobody else even got double digits.
But
Yeah,
they were
they're all
all
Democrats.
Democrats,
Yeah.
though.
So this is
Correct?
an early indication of the
Yeah.
people in that particular poll and how they're leaning. But what's your take? Would you like to see? What do you think about Kamala Harris running again in 2028?
I think it would be a mistake. I mean, I think Kamala Harris has shown um, in both bids, whether it was not making it out of Iowa the first time, and granted she was on a truncated schedule this time, she still lost. I don't think Kamala Harris is a winning candidate for the Democrats. That's just my personal opinion. Quite frankly, I wasn't really impressed with anybody who was named in that list of potential Democratic candidates who were polling in that. I don't really think any of those are quote unquote winners for the Democratic Party. I think that um, the Democrats probably need some fresh blood. I think it would be a mistake for the Democrats to roll Kamala Harris back out. Um, there was a lot of damage done, I think, in this last campaign and in her loss. That I think it's just going to be tough to run her back out there in 2028 and get the enthusiasm back up for a candidate who's already lost. Now, granted, we don't know who she'll be running against. Trump might, if that's the case, he might try to run for a third term again. Who knows who will be out there on the Republican side. But I think Democrats need to go into the bullpen and find some fresh faces. Somebody, without the baggage of past losses, maybe without the, some of the track records, negative things in the track record that could impact them negatively. I really do think the Democrats need some fresh blood, and they need to find some fresh candidates.
If you guys run Kamala Harris against JD Vance or whoever, it'll be the biggest. Y'all thought it was bad this time. Because it will be bad. I'm gonna give you guys a bone, and whatever you guys do with it, you guys do with it. I've been telling everybody who'll listen. The savior to the Democratic Party is right here in the bluegrass state of Kentucky. Andy Beshear. Andy Beshear has beaten Mitch McConnell's golden boy and Daniel Cameron. Mitch McConnell first act that Andy Beshear did when he got elected to governor of Kentucky was he restored the voter rights for felons, and then he made people of color, marginalized people, health care available for them. So Andy Beshear is your guys' guy. And I don't know why y'all keep passing him up or looking over him or looking over Kentucky, but if you guys want to have any path to the White House, if you guys present Kamala Harris, I'm personally going to do everything. I'm going to pick up where Candace Owens left off with her lineage or her heritage, where Candace Owens left off her daddy's birth certificate. And I'm going to go to Jamaica myself, to St. Anne's Parish, and ask around to see how much black she got in her. Because I ain't going for it.
That was a bit much, but okay. I don't know. I think that I would love to see what she could do with a full run. I do think that she didn't get a chance to truly sink her teeth into a good campaign. Like I said, and I said when she was first announced to be picking up the mantle for Biden when he dropped out, I said that she just don't have enough time. We have a lot of people have had that residual feeling of not really seeing her the last 4 years, and so kind of showing her swinging her in at the last minute. I just don't see this playing out very well. I said that from the very beginning. But I would have loved to see her do a full campaign run. I would have actually loved to see her campaign the entire 4 years that Biden was in office, because I truly feel like Biden should have never ran again. I think that he should have been a one-term president, and Kamala should have been campaigning in that first 4 years for the job. Like, I think that if she might have came out on top if that had been the strategy, but unfortunately it wasn't. And I don't necessarily know if I think that in 2028 that she will. I don't know. I just don't know if by 2028 the mass majority will have learned its lesson, and will feel an overwhelming sense of regret still. Like, I think that a lot of people feel it now, but I don't know by 2028 if that feeling of regret or buyer's remorse that we're seeing come from a lot of people who voted for Trump. I don't know if that'll last for 4 years, and I don't know if she'll be able to maximize on that to be able to have a successful campaign. And I agree. I do honestly. I really do. I would appreciate seeing some fresh blood, some new blood, somebody a little bit younger and a little bit better at having their finger on the pulse of what young voters would like to see in a candidate. Because I think that that's kind of been the overall consensus of the last few campaigns is that there has been a struggle to engage young voters in general, but especially young Democratic voters. And I don't see young Democratic voters coming out for somebody they've already seen. It's gonna have to be somebody we haven't seen before who has taken their campaign seriously and truly put boots on the ground and made themselves known. So I think that if she did run, it just would be a waste of time, and I don't think Democrats can afford to waste any more time. I think that it would be better if they chose somebody who, like I said, just has a better chance at, like I said, just injecting some fresh life into the Democratic Party.
Phil, you want to jump in there and I'll go after you, or?
Yeah. Reese, one of the leaders that Trump openly admires is President Erdogan of Turkey. This is one of the people he really likes. Well, if you noticed in the last couple of days, he's up for re-election. President Erdogan, what did he do? He had his principal opponent, who's like the mayor of the biggest city, arrested, locked up. Okay? And I don't think Donald Trump is closing his eyes to that. I think, as I've said before here, that we're not, in my view, he's not going to allow a free and fair election, whether that means locking up opponents, if it means declaring martial law because of some phony emergency, whether it means just infiltrating the voting processes and so forth. I just don't think, I fear we will not have a free and fair election. But putting that aside just for a minute, let's look at this philosophically, okay? The problem in primaries is it's always the extremes that vote. The people who vote in Democratic primaries tend to be pretty far left, and Republican primaries far right. And it's a contest. Who can be more extreme to appeal to the primary voters? Well, and by the way, what really hurt Kamala Harris in this election is because they quoted stuff she said when she ran in the Democratic primary in 2020. All the stuff about free, whatever, transgender operations for prisoners, whatever the heck it is she said. Well, what I would like to see in the Democratic Party, assuming there is at least an election, I would like to see the people in the Democratic Party, including the far left ones, kind of get together and say, defeating this guy, whoever it is, Vance, whoever, this is more important than our personal issues. This is more important than the green or the whatever it is. And they would say, even though he may not be my favorite, she may not, let's support the person that has the best chance to win. That's what I would like to see.
But what do you think about if there is an election? What do you think about Kamala?
What do I think?
Yeah, as a candidate.
To tell you the truth, Nathan, and things changed a lot. But as far as I'm concerned, the Democrats should leave it to the pollsters. That's pretty scientific. They can poll who does the best against who's ever the Republican candidate. And whoever it is, I'm not going to act like I don't have this great advice or knowledge as to how she does against Vance or against others, but I literally would trust the pollsters, trust the experts. Whoever has the best chance to win, that's the person they should nominate.
Yeah, for me, as I look at it, I think that if Kamala Harris had a longer runway, she would have beat Trump in 2024. She just didn't have enough time to overcome all the isms, sexism, racism, and all the other things that people was caught up with. I mean, if you look at it, and I understand that Donald Trump, won all the swing states. I get that. But if you really look at the popular vote, it was very close. It's very, very close. So I get it. Donald Trump on paper won the popular vote. Won the swing states. It was a sweep, first time ever. We'll talk about that in a second with Rosie O'Donnell's comments. So she was really close with 3 months on the campaign trail. And I think people always forget this. And they always forget that Donald Trump ran for 4 years. It was unprecedented. The man started campaigning the moment he lost and still barely won in terms of the popular vote. So, yeah, who else? I think she could win in 4 years because she could win on like a "See, I Told You So" campaign, right? Get petty with it. People seem to like petty, so give them petty. People are going through a lot of pain right now. I predict there's going to be a lot more pain in the next 3 to 4 years, and she could definitely capitalize off of that. She's got more name recognition now, And I can't see anybody else out there. I think Tarris brought up Bashir. I like Bashir as well. Gavin Newsom in California, but he's doing wacky stuff with his podcast. People are unsure about what his strategy is now. So yeah, I think she should be at the top of the list. I think she would have a pretty good chance of winning, provided they got the right strategy. They got to have a 21st century strategy to deal with this 21st century Republican Party.
Hey, Nathan, let me ask you this question,
Yeah.
because you've been staunch in this, and that you said you believe that the reason Kamala Harris lost was because of racism and misogyny. So my question to you
Race and
is,
gender, yeah.
yeah, racism and misogyny. So what is going to change in 4 years or 3 years or however many years before the next election that's going to change that dynamic? If you truly believe that that's the reason Kamala Harris lost, what is going to change? And I don't disagree with you, but what is going to change in that dynamic that ultimately is going to change that result, if that is indeed the reason she lost?
Yeah. So, first let me say this. So that's why I say race and gender, because there's a lot of people that don't necessarily hate Kamala Harris. They don't necessarily hate women. They just have questions about a woman's ability to lead. So I wouldn't really put that under the box of hating or misogyny. That's why I always use the term race and gender. But a
Okay.
couple things. So one,
I'm sorry, but how is that not misogyny?
well, I mean, I think there's people out there who don't necessarily hate women, but they question as to whether a woman should be in a position of leadership, because there's women who feel that way. And a woman, I don't think there's women that necessarily hate women. There's some, maybe, but they have been conditioned in this male dominated society to believe that there's only certain positions that a woman can be in. Like even in black
But
churches, there was a conversation about how, there are black people, black men and women in the church who don't believe that a black woman should be a pastor. Why? I think it's years and years of conditioning about gender roles.
I
but
got a
that is
question for you.
but
I got a
that's what
question
we
for you
refer
guys.
to in the black community as self-hate. That's what we refer that to when we look at somebody like a Candace, Daniel Cameron, or somebody. We often use the term self-hate because
Yeah, I
it,
know.
it refers to the concept that you're talking about, which is, if we're talking on a gender basis, which is misogyny. I don't have to hate like, it's the same way when you hear somebody white say, well, I don't hate black people, I'm married to a black man, or I have black friends, or I have this or I have that, but you still kind of subscribe to some of those attitudes that come with a white supremacist view on the world. You don't have to hate black people to be racist, or to maneuver with racist viewpoints, or out of the under the guise of racism. It's more so it's an ignorance thing. You believe what you believe because it's derived from a place of ignorance, and not necessarily hate every time. Like, there are racists who hate black people, but there are also people who do racist things because it comes from a place of ignorance, because they're unaware of what they're doing, of how what they're doing stems from a racist place, or a place that puts white supremacist ideals and viewpoints above other things. So I don't know if I agree that it's not necessarily misogyny. I just think that it's a different form of it.
Yeah, you might be right. But back to the other question you asked me, Phil, is no, Kevin, you asked me what's going to be different. So two things, and I think I mentioned that in my flow. So one, I think that unfortunately, I think a lot of people are about to go through a lot of pain because of this administration's policies. So you're going to have 2, 3, 4 years of people dealing with that. And I think that from a political cold calculus standpoint, that opens up a door politically for the Democrats in terms of the next presidential cycle. And that's why I say that's something that Kamala or whoever can take advantage of.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Let me finish Let me finish his
Okay.
answering his question. I'll throw it
Okay.
straight to you. But then, secondly, you said what's going to change? What, she has a longer runway. I think she would have beat Trump in 2024 had she had a year. Has she had a year and a half to overcome people's anxieties, their isms, racism, genderism, whatever it is, right? And I think that's what the difference could be. But go ahead, Phil.
Okay. Here's a question I'll throw out to you guys. Let's say it's the race in 2028, and let's say you believe that Kamala Harris, for whatever reasons, is the better qualified person, more qualified to be president. And let's say you take Andy Bashir, and let's say he's one of these blue dog Democrats or moderate, and let's say you agree a lot more with Kamala's positions than you do with his. But if the polling shows that, whether because of racism, misogyny, or whatever, that he has a better chance to win, would you say we need to support Bashir for that reason?
I think that there should be a primary, right, on the Democrat side,
Well, sure, there's
and
going to be.
and whoever comes out, right? I mean, that's what I think ultimately at the end of the day.
Well, that's the way it always is. That's the law.
Right.
But I'm
And that
talking about in terms of who you would support in terms of based on what I just said.
Well, I think in a primary situation, I think people should vote for who they support. I mean, if I truly in my heart believe that Kamala Harris was the best candidate, that's who I'm going to cast my
Best candidate
vote
to be
with.
president or best chance to win?
I
Best
think
Well,
president.
I think primary voters determine,
No, but I'm
who
asking you
has.
guys. You guys are primary voters. What I'm
right.
asking you is, if you let me listen, if you go to the Democrat, assuming you guys vote in the Democratic primary, and maybe you don't, but assuming you do,
I'm gonna vote for who I think I want to vote for in the primary.
Yeah.
I know that. But
Right.
what you're not hearing me. What I'm asking you is, if the candidate that you like the most, who would be, in your opinion, the best president, is running against somebody you don't like as much, but who, from everything you can tell, has a better chance to beat Trump or whoever Trump lookalike is,
Right.
would you then vote for that person when you pull that lever in the Democratic primary?
That's a good question. For me, at the end of the day, I would go with, and again, it's hard to predict, right? So we're all just sort of like prognosticating, right? Because we don't really know. But for me, I would go with the candidate who I thought could ultimately win, right? If that's what you're asking me. Even if that wasn't Kamala Harris or somebody else, because I would be looking at the bigger picture. However, in a primary situation, I'm not thinking about any polls. In a primary, I'm going to check that box for whomever
Well,
it is that I
you're
feel like
answering
I
it
want to
both,
vote for.
Nathan. You're answering it both ways. You're first
Yeah,
saying,
because you're asking me a question that needs to be answered both ways, right? Right? Because
well,
on one hand,
I
you're
don't
asking
think
me
so.
about the primary, but then you're also asking about the general election.
No, I'm not asking you about the general. The primaries determine who the general election candidate. What I'm saying, and this is kind of what I'm saying to Democrats, is when you go into that booth, whether you're talking about somebody you're endorsing, if you're a well-known person, or just somebody you're voting for, and you have, let's just hypothetically say it's Kamala Harris against Andy Bashir, may well not be, but let's say you believe, and I think most probably primary voters who vote in the Democratic primary are probably going to lean, I would guess, more toward her. Okay, in terms of philosophy and
Maybe.
issues and diversity and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that what I think that Democrats should do in an act of patriotism, whether it's endorsing or who you vote for, is say, look, I believe this country is at risk of losing our democracy. I'm going to vote for the person who has the best chance to beat Donald Trump, not necessarily, even if I don't think that person will be as good a president as this other person.
Well, Phil, let me ask you this: under what criteria or what basis would you be determining that a person would be a better candidate or more likely to beat the Republican? Like, what are you
Polls.
basing that off
You
of?
could do hypothetical polls
Well,
where they.
so sure. So then that answers your own question, because if polling shows that Bashir would be a better candidate uh, for president, I
Better
mean, one
chance to
might think,
win. Better
or a
chance to
better
win.
chance to win. I mean, I think, look, when you get right down to it, pretty much any Democratic candidate, if they're most of them in the primary, I think most Democrats could probably live with any one of them that would, that might emerge from a Democratic primary. Like, I don't think as a Democrat that, too many people would be upset if your choices were between, Kamala Harris and Andy Bashir or somebody of that like. So I think that, at the end of the day, whoever came out of that, I think Democrats would probably throw their support, behind who that individual was, sort of wholeheartedly.
No,
But I
I
think to
I
Nathan,
agree with that. It's
but I think to
choosing. It's
Nathan's
how they would
point,
choose the candidate. That's what I'm asking.
yeah,
How they
but I
should.
think but I think to Nathan's point, in a primary, I think that gives you the opportunity as an individual voter to vote your conviction. Who is the candidate that you think you would like to see win? And then if polling suggests that, the majority of Democrats or the country or the independent thinks Bashir is going to win, he's probably going to emerge as the winner anyway. If that's what the polling is suggesting.
And I think I struggle with your question, Phil, because the poll that really matters is the results of the primary, right?
No, because
Yeah.
that's liberal Democrats. That isn't the general population. That
Yeah.
is not true.
Yeah, but the only poll that matters in a primary is the conclusion that the primary voters
No, this is
decide.
just the opposite of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is typically if you get a candidate's farther to the left, that's why Kamala Harris made so many kind of extreme statements in the 2020 primary. She wanted to give sex change operations to prisoners. She wanted to have no border enforcement, whatever it is, which she and the others there were playing to that left flank. Okay.
Yeah, that's not true.
And what I'm saying is for you to say, oh, well, whoever wins that primary, that's the person who has the best chance to win. No, because you're not running, the voting population in the primary is pretty far left or liberal Democrats. That's not the population in the general election.
Right. And that's why I say you had to answer a question in almost two different ways. But
I think to answer Phil's question, though, I think the track record is usually the person who emerges, whether you're talking about Republican or Democratic primary, is the person who has the best chance, who the party thinks has the best chance to win in the general election. I mean, that's what happened to Biden back in 2020, even though he got off to a slow start. If you remember, he lost the first two Democratic contests out of the gate, and then it was when he got to South Carolina that his fortunes changed. And I think polling showed sort of like head to head that he was the candidate who was most likely to beat Donald Trump in a head to head, if I'm remembering what the polling was saying at that point. And I think he eventually wound up being, the Democratic nominee.
And that's what led to Clybourne's endorsement.
Contests.
I think Clybourne endorsed him for that reason. I think Clybourne cared more about the country, if you will, than about kind of his party. And I give him a lot of credit for that.
All right, let's move on. Good conversation. If you want to join the conversation, for people who might be in the chat, there is a link that is saved at the top of the chat comment section on both YouTube and also on Facebook. If you click on that, you can essentially call into the show. When I see you backstage, I'll bring you on. All right. So Rosie O'Donnell is getting some attention for her comments that she made about the election. Let me play this video for you and tell me what you think.
A lot of people did vote for him.
Yes.
Do you accept their right to do that and their opinion of him?
Well, I respect their right to do that. I question why the first time in American history a president has won every swing state and is also best friends, and his largest donor was a man who owns and runs the internet. So I would hope that would be investigated and that we would see whether or not it was an anomaly or something else that happened on election night in America when Kamala Harris was filling up stadiums with people who supported her, and Donald Trump was not able to do that. So it's curious to me, and as an American and a believer in democracy, I would hope that we would be able to look at all of the reasons why this happened in our country.
Do you agree with Rosie? Rosie says that we need to do an investigation into the 2024 election. Do you agree?
Rosie sounds as delusional as some of those MAGA folks did after Trump lost in 2020. Look, we got to get past this point where every time the side that you vote for loses, somehow or another there's something illegal or untoward that took place in the election. She sounds exactly like Donald Trump and the MAGA deniers. Trump always wants to talk about crowd sizes and how many people he had versus how many people Joe Biden had. I mean, it's just Rosie O'Donnell saying it, and it's ridiculous. And I think that, look, and that's not to say that in every election you're not going to have, voter suppression tactics and things of that nature, or small instances of voter fraud. We talk about this all the time, but America has one of the safest, most secure election processes of any place in the world, and Republicans and Democrats both need to stop with the shtick about election corruption and election denial. You lost. Live with it. Come back, get it the next time. Run a better candidate, run a better campaign, convince more voters. But Republicans and Democrats both need to stop with trying to cast aspersions on the election system. Hey, say what you will. Yeah, Donald Trump had Elon Musk, and I'm sure all the money that he dumped into that campaign did make a difference down the stretch in the swing states. That's probably undeniable. Doesn't mean it's illegal, to pour campaign money in, for advertisements and commercials. Nothing illegal about that. So we just need to stop with that. Stop with that stuff, man. Run better candidates, run better campaigns, get the votes out, raise more money, and win. And it basically comes down to that.
If the Democrats focus on that and Rosie O'Donnell and that kind of strategy, you're going to continue to keep losing over and over and over again. I agree with Kevin. We should just move on from that. And with Rosie talking about Elon Musk, Elon opened up an avenue for people who wanted a space to speak. He purchased X and gave people a platform to speak. And you're saying it didn't work, but they gave the people a platform to podcast and all these podcasts that were coming out, and just made it a free for all. And people wanted that.
That was Twitter before he bought it. Nobody who still remains on Twitter, other than maybe white supremacists, nobody who was on Twitter before Elon Musk bought it was limited in being able to speak their truth. What are you talking about?
That's untrue. The reason why Elon Musk purchased Twitter or X is because there was been so much suppression going on. That's the reason why, because he was like, and then that's why he opened up the floodgates, because they tried to ban him. I don't think it was Kanye West or a couple of people were going on these rants and people were getting banned from Twitter. And I think Elon Musk was going to be banned from Twitter. That's why he bought it.
They were spewing racist and inflammatory rhetoric. Like, he definitely opened up the floodgates, but it was for white supremacists to get on the internet and say the most foul, despicable things possible. Okay. Beforehand, Twitter had its limitations. I'll give you that. It did have its limitations because we all have the what was the First Amendment, the freedom to free speech and yada 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 and blah blah blah. You do have the right to have free speech, but you don't have the right to escape the consequences of your free speech.
The consequences of free speech. Hold on, let me finish. But I didn't even. She cut me off. The consequences of the free speech with Twitter being opened up was to win the election. This was all. I mean, that's what happened. You give people a voice who were being suppressed, and then he said, "Okay, I'm going to buy this thing, and I'm going to give people a voice to talk." Just like TikTok, they have these places on Twitter that these open room forums and stuff like that. You can go in and you can have all these rooms of like-minded people talking. And there was people going to a room, and you can have thousands of people in there sharing like-minded information, while people on the Democratic Party side are still getting their news from mainstream media. There was a whole push, and you might not, and it wasn't illegal what they did. They opened up just like TikTok was a group of hundreds of thousands of people would come together and spread information to take out and disperse it amongst their people. Tens of thousands of influencers. They were doing the same thing on Twitter, and they made, instead of people being suppressed and not being able to talk about things, Elon Musk made it a freedom to be able to talk about things, and the podcasting that he was able to distribute and all those things. So I don't think that Elon Musk did anything wrong at all. And if they keep going to the woe is me, cry me a river violin, you're going to keep losing elections. I think you guys should regroup.
That's so hypocritical. When 4 years ago, this was the conversation that the entire election was stolen. I love you, Kevin, but I vehemently disagree. I have no issue with people raising the question of whether or not our elections are secure or not. Because if we truly believe that we have the safest elections you could possibly have, then what's the issue with investigating it? What's the issue with making sure that it remains as such? What's the issue with if
There,
somebody raises a
so
question
let me say
saying,
this.
okay, well, investigate it. Show me the
Let,
evidence
let,
of why you
let me
feel
say
that
this.
way. And
Let me
if you
say
can
this,
prove that
Raven.
it's not secure, then cool, we should fix it. But if
Raven,
not, then we'll move on.
Raven, let me say this. I can raise questions about anything. That doesn't mean that it's merited for an investigation. Usually, when investigations are called for, there's more than just questions, but there's actually some evidence or something that would require. If you went down to the Cincinnati Police Department and suggested that they open up an investigation on Nathan Ivey without any credible evidence or any credible reason for the police to start looking into Nathan Ivey, they're gonna tell you to go somewhere. And this is what I'm talking about with these calls for investigations into the election. Just because I don't like the result, this is the same criticism that I had of Donald Trump. Just because I don't like the result doesn't mean that there needs to be some kind of investigation. Donald Trump could never bring any investigate or any evidence to bear to support his calls for an investigation or an overturning of the election. Rosie O'Donnell doesn't have any evidence other than the fact that for the first time a president won every swing state. Well, it was the first time for everything.
But that's
That
not all
doesn't
she
mean
said, Kevin. That's
that.
not all
Well,
she
okay. Well,
said.
what? No, but my question to you is, Raven, what evidence did you hear her say other than Elon Musk owns Twitter? She didn't even name who he was. She just said that Donald Trump has a friend, and that this is all I heard her say. She didn't produce any credible evidence to suggest anything untoward had gone on that requires an investigation. She just didn't like the result. And this is what I'm saying we got to get away from. Bring some facts and evidence to bear that makes me say, okay, that's valid. But anybody can raise questions about anything. That doesn't mean that it's valid and it actually needs to be looked into. This is the difference between people just getting on social media and popping off and actual stuff that should be looked into. This we make things into a joke when we start crying wolf or just throwing out wild accusations without evidence. It doesn't look good when Donald Trump and MAGA did it. It doesn't look any better whether it's Rosie O'Donnell or anybody on the Democratic side. That's my argument. I'm not saying that if there's legitimate evidence, don't look into it. But you can't just come to me and say, "Oh, my gut is telling me this," with no evidence. That don't fly.
But isn't
Nowhere
a
does
portion
that
of an
fly.
investigation to find evidence? Isn't that part of an investigation? Maybe I'm wrong, but I would think that part of an investigation is to find evidence to support the claim because the entire investigation starts with a claim of wrongdoing. If I go to the
Probable
police
cause.
station, if I go to
Probable
the police
cause.
station and I said, I think Nathan Ivey might have done A, B, C, and D, and somebody asked me, well, why do you think so? I'm going to give them why I think that he might have done such. I don't have any evidence to prove it, but I need you to investigate so maybe that you might find the evidence to prove my claims. That's kind of the point of
Police
the
ain't gonna do
investigation, is it
that.
not?
Police are
The
not
police is
gonna
not
do
going to ask
that.
me for evidence. They're going to conduct an investigation
They're
to see
not
if
gonna.
they can
No,
find
no, they're
evidence of
not,
what my
Raven.
claim
No, they're
is, and
Raven.
then
They're not
move.
gonna end. They're not gonna waste their precious time and resources when you're bringing them something with no evidence. The police are gonna tell you, "Sorry, ma'am. Come back when Nathan done hit you upside the head or with some bruises or something." You can't. You're not gonna be able to do that. That's not how real law enforcement and
I
investigations
don't
work.
know if you can say that, Kevin,
You
because
can't do that.
we wouldn't have things like Crime Stoppers where you can call a 1-800 number and say, "Hey, I think such and such might
Yeah,
have
but
did A, B, C,
that's
and D,"
considered
and then they go and
that's
they
evidence.
investigate.
That is evidence.
But that's what I'm saying. If I say to you, well, I think such and such might have been involved in such and such, you're going
No,
off of a
no.
claim that I
The
made.
other is based on somebody calls Crime Stoppers because I saw this or I heard this. It isn't. Hey, I think you ought to investigate this guy, but I have no evidence. That's different.
I don't know. I don't think that it's outlandish to investigate a claim. I don't. I think that there are a lot of crimes that are hard to. Of course, they're hard to prove without evidence, but it's been done.
Well, that's why we have
We've
what they
seen
call
our justice
probable
system.
cause. I mean, this is what they do in Russia and those kind of countries. They start quote investigations. Not they have no evidence, but they are almost kind of expected to turn up evidence. That's why all of Putin's adversaries are either dead or they're in prison. And supposedly, hopefully, our country is now hasn't always been, but our country is supposed to be different. That's why we have a term in the law, probable cause. Like you cannot just stop a car, okay, and search it, or search somebody's house if you do not have probable cause, which is another word for some evidence.
But probable cause is always under the discretion of the law enforcement individual who is in the
No,
situation.
it is not. That's why you a warrant to
It's
search
a lot of
somebody's
black people who
house.
would say different, but
You need a
okay.
judge. You need a judge to get some affidavits from. Could be the cops say we have an informant or did this or whatever, and then they cannot invent probable. They can't. They have to prove to a judge by at least a preponderance that there's probable cause that this guy did some crime.
I mean,
Yeah,
like I said, there are a lot of people who have dealt with police who would say different, but okay.
I mean, for me, it is clear. It is crystal clear,
Mhm.
and I'm just a little bit shocked that some of the people in the crew today is getting this completely wrong. It is completely clear to me that Rosie O'Donnell is 100% correct. She was inside her bounds as a U.S. citizen to make that claim. There should be an investigation to it. She's right.
I agree.
There's a lot of people out in this country
Based
who
on what
feel
evidence?
it's just a lot. I'm going to get to it. It's a lot of people in this country right now who feel the same way. They just cannot believe the results of the election based upon either anecdotally their own experiences, the fact that statistically, for the first time in history, one candidate wins all of the swing states. And I'll take it a step further. There's a guy named Roland Martin, and I can't remember what episode it was. But if you go back, I'm sure you'll find on his YouTube channel. He brought a dude in who did a forensic analysis as to into some of the poll, the election results. And again, I don't have expertise in this field, but he reported that he felt like there were some statistical anomalies that to him feels like somebody did something with the election. I would not be surprised whatsoever
Can I
because
ask
this
a
this
question?
unholy alliance between Elon and Trump, there's something more to this than just the fact that, in my opinion, that Elon gave him $250 million to try to win for his election campaign coffers. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, and I don't see this as being like what the Republicans did. See, here's what we got to do: we can't afraid to be upset to say that we feel like something happened with the election just because Donald Trump did what he did 4 years ago. They don't get a pass because of that. If you feel like something happened in the election, then you feel like something happened in the election.
You're the one that doesn't get the pass. You're the one who wants an investigation with no
I'm
evidence,
just
just
saying,
like Donald Trump.
when the
It's exactly what
Democrats,
Trump did.
the difference between what I hear Rosie O'Donnell saying in that clip is she didn't say the election was stolen. What she says is, I have concerns and there should be an investigation. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Who is Rosie O'Donnell?
6 to 1, half dozen
An
dozen.
American citizen.
First of all, who is Rosie O'Donnell?
An American
First of
citizen.
all, here's the problem. Here's another problem that I have with Rosie O'Donnell. Didn't I also read that like her and her daughter like moved to Ireland after
Yep.
Trump got elected?
Yep.
First of all, if you're gonna sit there, if it's that big of a deal for you and it's that much of a fight, then keep your butt in the United States and fight for the election. Don't move to Ireland and then talk trash
What
about the
difference does
election
that
being
make?
about the election
Kevin,
being
that
about the
makes no
election being
difference
rigged.
whatsoever.
What?
What difference does that
It
make?
does make a difference, Nathan. You
Tell me,
might not
explain
think
the
it makes
difference.
it. You might not think
Explain
it
to
makes
me
a
how that
difference.
makes a
You might
difference,
not think
Kevin.
it makes a difference. But again, look.
No, explain to me why you think it
If
makes
you
a
are
difference.
if you are an American citizen, and then stay in your country and fight for what you believe in. Don't skip your butt to Ireland for your whatever, your mental health, or so you can sleep. Whatever else she said. There are a whole lot of people who didn't like the result of Donald Trump, who's sticking it out here in America, fighting for it the right way, taking care of their health and getting
Kevin,
their
all of
sleep.
us ain't got Rosie O'Donnell money to try to move nowhere else. Because if I did, I'd be
I,
gone. I'd be up out of
You
here.
criticize the government if you move
Listen,
out of the
I'm just
country
saying.
after the
I'm just
election.
saying. If you for your country, you for your country. That's my opinion.
That's called a deflection.
So
everybody.
yes, in my opinion, it dilutes my opinion of her somewhat and what she has to say. That is something that plays into how
So
I'm
let me
taking
make sure I
what
understand
she's
what you're
saying.
saying, Kevin. So you're telling me that if Rosie O'Donnell had stayed in the United States, you would give more credence to her argument than the fact that
wouldn't
she
give
moved
any
to Ireland.
I wouldn't give
And
I
that
wouldn't
makes
give
sense to
any
you.
credence to it. I wouldn't give any credence to it. But it adds, but the fact that she did that adds even more on to how I think what she's saying is
How
sour
so?
grapes and ridiculousness.
How so?
It adds to that.
It's like a comma. It's like a comma
Yeah,
add
but
to
how
it.
so?
So
You're
it would be
saying it
nothing
adds,
if
but
she
how so?
stayed, but because she left, it means
No,
more.
I didn't
I'm
say I
not
didn't
really
say it.
That makes
understanding.
no
Hear
sense,
what
bro.
I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying. I'm saying that I would still respond in the same way, even if she had stayed. But any shred of credibility that I would have been willing to lend to her went extra out the door by the fact that you bounced to Ireland. So I'm not considering you either way. But the fact that you bounced really makes me, even if I wanted to give you the
So this
benefit
is
of
a
the doubt,
deflection. So this
I'm
is a
not. No,
deflection.
to you.
This
To
is a
you, it's a
deflection.
deflection, Nathan. To you, it's a deflection. But you
Because it
can't
doesn't make
tell
any
me.
sense,
You
bro.
can't
What you
tell
just
me.
said don't
It
make
don't matter
sense,
that it
bro.
don't make sense to you. It makes sense to
It
me.
don't make sense to anybody but
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
But you
Okay.
that
That's
makes
fine.
so
That's
because
hey.
you
You know
went to
what, Nathan? That's
Ireland,
the only person it need to make sense to. It don't. It need. It, that's
so
the.
because you
Hey,
went to
That's the
I'm
only person
Ireland,
it
agreeing.
let
need
me
to
I
get
am
make
this
sense
straight.
agreeing with
to.
the
It
voice
Hold
don't
of
need to
on.
make
hold it.
sense to
Let
you.
me
I'm
make this.
agreeing
It
So
with
makes
the
sense
because
to
you went
me.
to Ireland, her
I'm
argument
agreeing with the
about
voice
whether
of
it should be
reason
an
on this.
investigation
Okay.
into election makes less sense. That makes no sense, bro. But we
It's a
can move on.
comma. It's like a comma. It's like she did this and she's moved to
Thank you.
Ireland, so she
Thank you,
ain't got nothing.
Terrence.
And
The fact that Terrence
I
is
got a
agreeing
question.
with you should tell you how wrong you are. It don't make sense.
Nate, I got a question for you though. You mentioned Roland Martin. Do you think that he used some of the money that he got from Kamala Harris to launch that investigation to create the doubt in the investigation, or do you think that was just something he caught up on his own?
In what investigation?
Well, you said you mentioned Roland Martin in one of his episodes.
Yeah. He had a
Mentioned
guest on that did a forensic analysis
did
into
he
some of the
use
election results.
did he use some of that money that he got from Kamala Harris to pay that forensic analysis to come onto his programming to produce that, or do you think he used his own money? I was just wondering if he's still
Man,
spending
I
some
don't
of that
answer
Kamala Harris money.
Do not answer me. I do not answer dumb questions, Tarris. Anywhere in the world, that's a dumb question. Next question. That don't make no sense, man.
Again,
You just
where's
asking
the
some crazy stuff.
evidence? Where's the evidence? We got to get to a point where if Trump didn't have evidence, which he didn't, he should have been criticized, and he was. Rosie O'Donnell or whoever else is bringing up this notion of investigations has no evidence that
Right.
I've seen. If
I'm
you've
glad you
got
brought that up.
evidence, bring it forward. If you don't have evidence, then you deserve the same criticism that MAGA got,
No,
that
you
Trump
don't.
got.
No, you
Where
don't.
is the evidence?
Well,
See,
here's
you
where
don't like it. You don't like it, Nathan, because it's for the side. Your side didn't win. So
that's
now
not it
you
at
think
all.
an investigation is justified.
That's
But
not it at all.
you were critical of Trump, and I'm not a Trump. I'm not a Trump defender. What angers me on this program, what I bring up time and again, is when it's your side, when it's the side you want, you will endorse the same things you criticize the other side for, and that's exactly what
And
this
you're wrong in
situation
that.
is. That's exactly
But
what
there's
this
a
No, you're
difference
situation
in
wrong
is.
what
in
was
that,
said,
Kevin.
though, Kevin. There's a difference because Trump flat out said that the election was stolen. Rosie O'Donnell, all she did was ask for an investigation.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
Right.
She's not
That's
saying that
the
anything was stolen.
implication. The
She brought up
implication is the
reasons why she
same.
had suspicions and
The
asked for an
implication is the
investigation.
same.
Can I tell
The
you?
implication is the
So
same.
the
It's
problem
not,
Rosie
with what
though.
you just said, Kevin, is this.
suggesting that the election was stolen without saying it.
Yeah, but here's the problem
You don't call
with
for
what
an
you just said.
investigation unless you think something was wrong. If you
Right.
thought it was right, what's the investigation for?
Exactly. That's
There's
what she's
nothing to
saying. Rosie
investigate.
O'Donnell is saying she thinks something was wrong. But that kind of cookie cutter sort of like approach does not fit all arguments and cannot compare Donald Trump and what he did as it related to the 2020 election. Because what happened is he just went out there and said the election was stolen, and it sparked investigations, and almost all the states did investigations. And even after those investigations, in many cases like Ohio, where the elections are run by Republicans and they came back and said nothing went wrong, he stuck with it. That's not the
You
same
know,
as
you know
Rosie
why, you
O'Donnell
know why
saying, look, I think
investigations, you know
somebody
why,
should look into it. It's not the same. It's nowhere
you know
near.
why, you know why it's not the same, Nathan? Because Donald Trump was a candidate. He was the
Hey,
candidate who was
hey, money.
calling into question the election results.
That's not the only reason.
Kamala Harris did not call for an investigation. I'm sure if
Right.
Kamala Harris had contested the results and called for an investigation, it would have been investigated in the same way in
Yeah.
which Donald Trump
And
had been
many people think she
investigated.
should have. But that's
Well,
the
but she
only way that's
didn't. It
different.
don't matter what you think
The
she
other
should have
way that
done.
is
She didn't.
different is that Donald Trump had no credible information that the election was stolen. His people told him beforehand, during the election, during the many investigations in various states, and even afterward, his people told him that. And to this day, he's still saying the election was stolen. That is nowhere near the same
It
as
was a key
Rosie
part of his
O'Donnell.
campaign for the last 4 years.
It's nowhere near the same. And so
Okay.
people cannot be afraid to voice their concerns about whether the election was stolen. Just
I'm
because
not
they're
saying you can't
afraid,
voice your concerns.
just
You
because
you
they're
can voice
afraid,
whatever you
let me
want
get it
to
out.
voice. That
People
don't mean it
cannot
should
be
happen.
afraid just because other people might criticize them and say, hey, you can't do that because look at what you said 4 years ago. Nah, you're not getting a pass on that, homie. You don't get no pass. If the Democrats win in 2 years, they should do House investigations, right, into the election efficacy to see if anything went wrong. There's nothing wrong with that.
And let's just call a dub a dub. If we gonna really talk about it, we are currently watching Elon Musk, who was integral in Donald Trump's campaign the last 4 years. We are watching in real time the mess that he has made of Doge. How every other day there's new information about how that organization is a scam in itself. And you mean to tell me that Rosie O'Donnell getting on somebody's show and saying maybe we should look into the election that he may or may not have had a hand in? That's like it's impossible for us to look at what he's doing currently right now in real time with Doge, with he is breaching millions of Americans' private information, and he's asking to do it, even to take it even a step further and continue doing so. In the same breath, we're saying, well, Rosie O'Donnell has no evidence of what she's saying. She has no reason to believe that there was anything off or off-putting about the current election because of how she feels about Elon Musk's involvement in it. Because that's who she was talking about. She's talking directly about the guy we're watching in real time violate our rights as American citizens, violate our privacy. How is that not reasonable? A reasonable argument or a reasonable claim to make that maybe the same guy who is currently violating our privacy as American citizens, maybe we should also look at his involvement in our election. How can you say that?
You know, from what I see from Elon, to piggyback on your point there, if he could have, he would have. Like, I believe that from looking at his moves. I'm not saying he did or not because I don't have any information, but I believe that if he could have gotten it off, if Trump could have gotten it off, if the Republicans could have gotten off, they would have. That's the kind of people we're dealing with. And just furthermore, so people know where I'm coming from, I had no problem with the investigations at Trump. When Trump came out and said, oh, the election was stolen, launch investigations, my attitude was cool. Launch the investigation. If they stole it, call it out. And if they didn't steal it, then that's what it is. Frankly, they should do investigations every time that there's an election in every single state, just to make sure that we are preserving our election integrity. And I don't care who wins. It's about us. It ain't about them. It's not about the elected officials. It's not about the political party. It's about me as a citizen having confidence that when I vote, that my vote is actually going to count, and that it's going to be we, the people, that decide who our leaders are, and not some other nefarious forces. So
I will just say Donald Trump has won. He's won because his whole election rig shtick has done exactly what it's designed to do. And this is the same conversation that we're going to be having now from until the end of the time. Exactly what Nathan said. Every election should be investigated. We never said that. We never said that prior to 2020. We never said that prior to 2020.
Well,
Every election,
even
the most contested election that we had and the most investigated election was the 2000 Bush Gore with the hanging Chad, and there was good reason for that based on what we knew, and we overcame that. But never until 2020 was there ever any question that any Americans were calling for investigations of elections. I will just simply say this insane conversation that we're having right now, give Donald Trump the W.
Give him the W. Okay.
Give him the W.
I wouldn't necessarily put it that way, but okay.
He's done exactly what he intended to do, which was basically disarm the institution of elections, cast doubt on it, and have everybody having these types of insane conversations that we're having right now. He's won. Give it to him. Get a man his credit. He was successful in exactly what he wanted to do, casting doubt on every election. And the fact that Rosie O'Donnell, that we're sitting here talking about Rosie O'Donnell raising questions about the election, give that man his W.
Well, I think
He's
what you're
won.
overlooking there is the fact that it's not just Rosie O'Donnell. I mean, there's a lot of people who are silent about it, but they have similar questions about it as well. It's not just her.
Rosie
And
O'Donnell was not the first person I've
yeah,
heard say that. I've been hearing people say this the very same thing
yeah,
since election day. So she's not the first.
right. And I mean,
Yeah,
those voices.
barbershop conversation is different than people who are in a position to know. And again, this is what I'm talking about. Anybody can raise question. Anybody who don't like the results, and that's what I'm saying. Who is it that's raising the questions? And I know you're gonna say every American citizen is entitled to do that, but there are people who are in position to know, people who have knowledge. I mean, Nathan, you just cast out something and you said, well, I don't have any information, but then you went on ahead to make a point. Bro, when you say you don't have any information, like that should be the end of the conversation right there, because you are offering an uninformed perspective. I'm not saying you don't have a right to do it, but there's no value to it when you have no information. Like we can't keep going on with it. Yeah, anybody can feel a certain type of way, but if you don't have any information or you don't have any evidence to present, your opinion is no more valid than anybody else's. And so it's like you can feel however you want to feel about it. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying when you're talking about launching investigations and doing some other things, there's got to be more than, oh, I just don't
No,
like the result, or, oh, this don't sit right
you
with
are.
me, or whatever. That's not how the system
That's
works.
exactly how the
Nor
system
is it how it
works.
should work.
That's exactly how the system works. That's exactly
Okay,
the way
that
the
is
system
not.
is
That
supposed.
is not.
Yes,
And
it
don't tell
is.
the audience that,
Yeah, I'm
because
gonna
that's
tell you. I'm
not
gonna
how the
explain it to
system
you. Let me
works.
explain it to you. That's exactly how Congress works. So if you get a bunch of citizens, right? Let's say I live in the first district and I have an issue. If I raise my concerns to my congressman and I can get enough of them on board, then Congress can launch investigations into various sectors of our lives. That's what they do all the time. We see congressional hearings off of things that were started by
So why aren't the
constituents.
Dems doing it
Hold
then,
on, hold on.
Nathan?
We see congressional hearings, right, that were started by concerns raised by citizens all the time. That's the way Congress works.
Nathan, do
You
you
are
think
wrong.
do you think if the Democrats actually thought that the election was stolen, that there wouldn't be congressional hearings, that they wouldn't be making more noise about the election results, if they actually thought that there was corruption and collusion? I have not heard one
I
Democratic member of Congress.
Here's what I think. I think that if the Democrats take control of the House of Representatives in 2 years, and if there's a groundswell of their constituents who ask for an investigation, they should launch a congressional investigation into it.
But
That's
if
what I
it's so
think.
clear, but again, if it's so clear, according to Rosie O'Donnell and all these other people out here,
She didn't
if
say
it's
it was
so
clear.
clear, what in 2 years, what two
She did
years,
not say it was
Donald Trump will
clear.
be almost through. He'll be almost through his term in 2 years. So what difference do it make if you find out in 2 years when he's almost out of office that the election was stolen? Like what?
What
What is that going to do?
are you being
Like
serious?
if you really
Is
believe
that
that the
serious?
election was stolen, like that should have been the first thing Democrats did, like what Trump did. That should have been the first thing Democrats did if you actually believe on that. Why are we waiting two
But now you
years?
changing the whole conversation,
I'm not
right?
changing the conversation. I'm taking the
You are
conversation where you took it. You talked
no.
about congressional hearings and all of
Yes.
that. I'm asking if we really believe this election is stolen, like why do we not see congressional Democrats now doing it?
You have to
If
ask
it's as
them.
evident as Rosie O'Donnell and you guys say it
She did
is,
not say it
why
was
ain't it
evident.
happening?
But she did not say that, bro. What she simply said on that show was
She
that
was
I
asked a
have
question, she
concerns.
answered.
She was asked a question, she answered, she said, I have concerns. There should be an investigation. She didn't draw any overarching conclusions. She was just an individual citizen voicing her concern, as we all can. If I feel like the election was stolen based upon anecdotal evidence or whatever else, I have a right to say that. I got a right to say that. And if I can get enough people in my district to go along with it, if we all feel that way, we have a right to go to our congressman congressperson, our representative, and ask them to launch an investigation. People do it all the time.
Ain't
All
gonna
the
happen.
time.
Ain't
And if
gonna
they
happen.
find something, they find something. And if they don't, they don't. That's just the way it works. My
It
issue
ain't
with
gonna
Trump
happen.
was they didn't find anything. And more information was coming out that it was very clear there was nothing there and that he was lying about it. I'm not joking. I had no problem with the investigation, launch the investigation. See if it was stolen. And the reason why it would be useful, Kevin, because you said, well, what difference does that make in 2 years? I'm like, what? It makes it. Listen, if we find out through an investigation that the election was stolen, that means there's a gap in the system that we got to close. That's why it's important. You can't leave that gap open if in fact something like that happened. You have to close that to preserve our election integrity. It's about the
I would agree
people.
with that. I would agree with that.
Yeah, that's the usefulness in it, even if Donald Trump's going to be gone in 2 years. So again, there are people out there that feel that way. And if you feel that way, you should not have to be quiet about it just because somebody's going to throw Donald Trump in your face. It's two different things. You
Yeah,
cannot let
and
people get
again,
away with that.
my suggestion was not that you can't say anything. My suggestion was not that you can't feel any type of way. But I'm just saying that for me, in any case, whether it was a Republican or Democrat, if you want me to give it some consideration, I need to see some evidence.
Right.
And from what I heard from Rosie O'Donnell, there was no evidence that she presented.
It's just like there was
Just
no
just
evidence.
just that just simply that she didn't like Elon Musk and that she didn't like the results.
I don't know if it
And
was
to
just
me,
that.
that's not enough that's not enough to launch an
I
investigation.
think you're mischaracterizing her feelings, but okay. But look at what we just saw with the last Congress. I mean, how many hours did House congressional Republicans spend investigating Hunter Biden? And there was no evidence whatsoever. I
Waste
mean,
of time.
for hours and
I'm
hours and hours.
so you're making my point. I'm criticizing that. Like, why waste millions of taxpayer dollars on an investigation with no evidence that ain't going nowhere? And that's exactly what this would be.
No, no,
A
no, no,
waste
no.
of time and millions of tax dollars. If we're talking about all this waste, fraud, and abuse and saving money and putting it on the national debt, like these types of investigations are a waste of time
No, it's not.
without evidence.
It's not a
They
waste of
are, because they're not going to produce anything.
time.
It's not going to
But now,
produce nothing, Nathan. It's
no,
not
my
going
point.
to produce a thing.
Well, unless it produces a thing, right? Because you never know, right?
Okay.
So my
Well,
point is like we
Hunter
said
Biden didn't
earlier,
produce
there was some
nothing.
discrepancy about
Hillary
whether
Clinton didn't produce nothing. I mean, we can go down the list of all of the recent investigations. You could even say January 6th investigation didn't produce nothing.
you couldn't say that at all, actually.
I can, because the whole point of that was to impeach Donald Trump and get him out or get him in jail, and none of that happened.
So wait, Kevin,
So
the argument that you're making that if if an investigation doesn't produce anything, that it's pointless? Because I don't know if I agree with that.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
what I'm saying is that if you don't have any evidence, you shouldn't even have an investigation in the first place.
Yeah,
And I
but
think
January 6th, they had plenty of
and I
evidence.
do think that if an investigation doesn't produce any results, I won't say that it's a complete waste of time, but one does have to ask yourself,
Right.
if you embark in an investigation with an intended result and it doesn't produce that result, one does have to question whether it was worth one's time or not.
Yeah. You keep moving the goalposts, homie. You're moving the goalposts.
Well, I mean,
I finally got you to blame.
I'm responding to statements that's made. I'm not moving the goalposts.
You have moved the goalposts.
I'm responding to
completely.
questions that are
You
asked.
keep
that are
pushing
posed.
it down the road a little bit, but that's okay. It's all good though. Nice spirited conversation. Let's move on. Hey, listen, I was in the grocery store the other day, guys, and I saw something that disturbed me to no end. I mean, I was truly disturbed. And I just don't think this is good for, our country. I really don't. And I was at a Kroger store recently, and I wasn't caught off guard. I'm a modern man, so I didn't jump back or anything. But I was in a Kroger store recently, and I saw a robot just all by itself, just casually going up and down the aisles. I put two and two together. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but every once in a while I can come up with superlative flows. So I put two and two together. And I was like, this robot is sort of like an inventory robot. So I was at the Kroger store in Coreyville near the University of Cincinnati, and the robot didn't say anything to me, didn't bump into me, didn't beep at me like R2D2 or anything like that. He just casually went about his business. And then when I got home, I talked to my wife about it. She's like, yeah, I saw it too. So now Kroger stores is unveiling something new. And you might see this. You might see a robot just like that. And what is it doing? It is an inventory robot. It is checking to see gaps on the shelves. And then that'll tell people, okay, we need to put more bread or whatever a particular item is. And I started thinking about this, guys, and you know, I want to steal a page from Bill Maher. I want to offer up a new rule. New rule is that we should put limits on the types of jobs that AI and robots can actually do. Because my fear is that while we're talking about migrants and we're talking about, all these other things, right? Ukraine, and we're talking about Russia. To me, the real threat to the American workforce is robots and AI. Do you agree? Should we put limits on what type of jobs that robots and AI can actually do?
Um, I'm I'm two minds about this because I thoroughly enjoy the convenience of not having to deal with people. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm one of them people who I don't, and this is probably terrible, and I should probably not do this. But I can't tell you the last time I actually went through like a queue line in the grocery store, and I dealt with an actual person. I head straight to self checkout every time because I just prefer to do things myself, not have to talk to nobody, pay for my stuff, and leave. And I know that essentially is kind of part of the problem that we're seeing with some of the workforce and people being removed from some of the workforces and some of those jobs that people have for the last 100 years used to feed their families. I get that. I understand that. I respect that. But for something like this, I don't necessarily know if I'm mad at a robot for counting inventory. I don't necessarily know if I'm mad at that. But I do think that if it is not done in the correct way, it can lead to a lot of people um just not being able to feed their family. And I get why that should be a concern. I get why I should probably be patronizing a human cashier and standing in line and waiting my turn and having a little bit more patience. But I get it. I get why these things exist. I think that we do live in a world where convenience is king. And so if something can be done in a more convenient way, in a more cost effective way, you don't have to pay a robot benefits or a paycheck. You just kind of put it on the store floor and you pay for maintenance at the most, and then you go about your business. So I get from a business standpoint why it makes more sense for the business owner. But as somebody who probably, you know, needs that job to feed their family, like I said, I do think that they deserve, to have at least a section of the workforce kind of roped off for them to be able to do so. But I get it. Like I am part of the problem. I can admit I'm part of the problem.
So modern convenience has always been the downfall of the American worker. I mean, almost like we think about it now because we're talking about AI, but technological advancements have always been the downfall of human jobs. I mean, even going back to, some of the earliest inventions that we look as like Stone Age now, even then those were changing the way people did jobs and putting people out of work and changing industries. So technology, anytime we see any type of significant technological advancements, it probably is going to mean that it's going to cost some people jobs, and mostly it is in those jobs where that typically tend to be kind of sort of labor intensive jobs. And I think you know I do agree with Nathan. I think without some type of regulation, which is going to be very hard to do, um, you might very well find yourself in a situation down the line where you're going to have a lot more automation and robots doing a lot more doing jobs that normally human beings would be doing. And when you think about it from a business standpoint, it makes sense. You don't have to pay health benefits. You don't have to worry about people getting sick and not showing up for work. You got these robots that, as long as they're functioning and doing their thing, don't cost you health benefits. Don't, you know, they're a one-time expense in terms of putting down the money for it versus paying somebody every week and everything that goes along with actually having a human being working for you. You don't have to deal with, you know, with morale issues and talking back and insubordination and all of that with the robots. So from a business standpoint, there are a lot of advantages of why some businesses might want to go down that route. But I've always said this: I think it does get to a point where there's diminishing returns, because in order to have people to purchase products, goods, and services, they got to have money. And if too many jobs are being replaced by robots and people are out of work and they don't have jobs and they don't have money to be able to spend on goods and services, I think at some point there's a diminishing return there. So I definitely think it's something that we have to, you know, be aware of, be concerned about. I think you're definitely going to see a lot more jobs erode. My wife was out of town last weekend. She was in one of those, I forget what you call them, the driverless cars.
Waymo?
Yeah, Waymo. She took a Waymo to get to her destination. I ain't quite there yet. I told her she was braver than I was. I don't know that I can get into a car without a driver yet, if I'm at that point. But that's where we're headed, man. And it is definitely something to be concerned about, I think.
I'm someone who embraces this AI movement, and not to diminish anybody that's going to be losing their job, but like the approach that personally that I take is I'm 50, I got kids that are going to be coming and approaching, and I use the kind of the analogy of like how text messaging in 2005 to 2010 was just coming, and everybody's like, oh, I'll never text message. But now text messaging is the primary communication of most people. You know, and I see that's AI taking that same thing. I'm taking the approach of like just personally investing in NVIDIA and all and stuff like that, and making sure that my kids understand it and I can keep up with it as much as I possibly can, because I don't see it stopping at any time. I mean, we can say what we want, and we can, you know, kind of move in not scarcity mindset, but we can move in caution with AI. But I don't think that it's going. I think they've already figured out what's going to be happening for the next 20 years. It's just what are they going to be unveiling to us and how they're going to unveil it to us. So that's just my take on it. So should we put limits on jobs that they get? I don't think that we're going to have a opportunity to legislate that, because it's going to be unveiled so fast, and it's going to be, you know, like robots are going to be coming out by all. Elon will have his robots, and Gates will have his robots, and Meta will have their robots, and all these big tech people will have their robots unveiled on us before we even. That's just my futuristic thinking. So that's why I'm taking an aggressive approach to getting in front of it.
Phil, what's your take, man? So we put limits on the type of jobs that AI and robots do?
No, I don't think there are. Every problem isn't going to be solved by a new government regulation. It just creates more. It just creates more problems. I do think that we, particularly at the education level and the business level, we need to prepare people for what is coming, and so there are going to be jobs, even with robots. There are going to be jobs, whether it's making the robots or directing, whatever the future is looking like. We need to prepare the next generation and for this, so that they're not left out. There was a terrific commentary I just heard. I think I sent it to some of you guys, by Fareed Zakaria, if I'm saying that right. He basically totally tore apart the Trump tariff strategy. And the Trump's tariff strategy is, if we just make all these foreign goods too expensive, then Americans will build factories and build manufacturing facilities, and then everybody will buy from those American companies. And he made the point that that's stupid. Okay, we're getting away from the whole manufacturing thing, and so, which is, I thought it terrific, was an excellent analysis. But in this situation, we can, as you guys have said, we can kind of see where the future is, where it's going. So let's prepare people for it so they can get good jobs.
Good old Phil with the Republican anti-regulation philosophy. Hey, listen, y'all. Listen. And yeah, Phil, you sent it to me and Kevin. I had already saw it. He was on point with it. I can post a link if people are interested on my Facebook page. You can check it out for yourself. And so it's not that we are losing manufacturing. We are not a manufacturing society. We are a service society.
Right.
And if we replace the bulk of those services and who provides those services with AI and robots, where is the American worker supposed to go? What are you supposed to do next? Like, prepare how? Because everybody's not going to have the technical, wherewithal to be a designer or a computer programmer. Like, what are American workers going to do? How are moms and dads going to put food on the table? We need aggressive regulations today. Today. You should
Isn't
not.
that like Nathan to just spin the Democratic line, isn't it?
I don't know,
More and more,
but this isn't.
bigger and bigger government.
But you call it Democrat, Phil. I call it pro-workers. Regulations are good when it protects the people. The American worker, in my opinion, needs to be protected. You should not be allowed to. So they should do something like this, hypothetically. Tell me if you like this, Phil.
And he called me a socialist.
Tell me if you like this, Phil. So I would say, look, with Waymo, right? So Waymo basically is driverless cars. They're taking over, what Uber and Lyft drivers do right now, right? Uber and Lyft drivers. These are men and women, humans with families, babies, grandparents, mortgages, groceries, right? Think about the impact of the economy as well if you take away that buying power. But I think they should do something like this. Like, look, Cincinnati market, only 10% of your gig drivers can be driverless. Like something like that.
I got a
would be
question
more
for you,
aggressive.
Nathan. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Back when the automobile was invented, using your philosophy, are you saying the government should have passed a regulation limiting the number of automobiles to protect the horse and carriage industry?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't think that those two things don't compete, though.
Oh, they don't?
There is still a
it
human
does,
driver
Nathan.
in both of those situations.
Yeah, there's
So
still
what
a
do you
human
mean?
driver.
Well, but I think Phil was outlining the point that I was making earlier, that like we're focusing on this now because it's AI. But as I've said, technology has severely impacted as we've advanced in different ways. Let's just even take like in the meat or the cattle industry. I mean, I'm sure that in that industry, you have many things now that are done by machines that used to be done by people. I mean, I think you can point to almost any industry where there's been technological advancement and say that there was a job that was once done by a person that is now being done by a machine. It's just not AI. Again, we can even go to, if you go to any grocery store already, cashiers have been replaced by the checkout aisles. I mean,
Right.
that's technology that has replaced a job that people once did.
And that should have been stopped as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, none of us would disagree with the fact that you hate to see people lose their jobs, but ain't nobody slowing down to go to that one line that got 15 people in it with one cashier versus going to the self checkout. Even if you got more than 20 items that they say you're supposed to have on those, people are still more. It's like I said, convenience has been, and will continue to be the downfall for us. Is that people like convenience.
Same thing happened with taxis versus Ubers. Same thing.
Yeah. So you're
people-
making the classic argument, but I think that, and tell me if you agree, I think we're at a tipping point now. So yeah, everything you're saying is true. There's always been a measure of displacement with new innovation, right? I think with AI and what we're seeing now, we're at a tipping point where in some industries we could see humans completely shut out of it. And I think because of where we are now, we need to have a different approach. So when I think about this now, I have, at least in my mind, I call it my philosophy is ANR, right? I think that AI and robots should assist, not replace humans. Assist, not replace. So
How are you going to require that? How are you going to regulate that?
Well, we'll do it by industry, but I think the replace part is pretty evident, right? I don't think we should be replacing at this point human beings with
So you're going
with
to pass a
AI or
law
robots.
preventing that?
Say what now, Phil?
So you're going to pass a law saying no robots can replace human workers?
Absolutely. In certain industries, in certain
Yeah.
percentage,
And
absolutely,
what is
yes.
China and the other companies we're competing against, countries that we're competing against? What are they going to do?
It doesn't matter.
Oh, it does matter because they don't care as much about that about people, and they will kick our butts. That's what will happen.
That sounds hypothetically, but I'll have to see the specifics of it. Now, I mean, that doesn't mean this is an America first strategy. Like, MAGA likes to say America first. This is America first, right? America first means preserving human jobs. This matters. This matters. Where are
I
people
think
going to
Nathan
go?
raises, yeah, I think Nathan raises an interesting point that is worthy of debate. And again, this gets to my point of where's the law of diminishing returns. And so, yeah, I 100% agree that we don't want to stifle technological advancements, but you've also got to look at is technology at the expense of
Humans.
humans ability to live and support, like I think there's at some point where you've got to say that where is the line of diminishment there, where does technology putting people out of work, when does that start to be a negative for our country, a net negative for our country versus a positive? Because then you get to a certain place where maybe there are only certain people in society who can afford, certain technological and advancements. You know, maybe if everybody's got a robot in their house, well, maybe I can't afford a robot because I don't have a job, or that robot is taking my job. So I'm not saying that you stifle the technology, but I do think that there is a very real and reasonable conversation that needs to be had about, you know, and being aware of what does displacement look like. Now, look, we haven't done a great job as a country, even as we've made the shift from manufacturing, from being once being a manufacturing country to now being one that's more kind of technology based,
Service
service
industry.
oriented type.
Yeah.
And we haven't done a great job of preparing people who who were from that manufacturing background for the new technological age here in America. A lot of people got left behind and are still behind as a result of that. So if we're going to move forward with the technology, as Phil said, we certainly got to do a better job of preparing the American population for what is that next level of job. And particularly when we are having this debate about higher education and whether that's quote unquote elite. I mean, if you're going to do away with a lot of the manual labor jobs and the skill related jobs, if those are all going to be possessed by robots, then that's going to put a significant portion of the uneducated American population at a significant disadvantage. What is their jobs going to be? What are their jobs going to be?
And this is why I don't like Waymo. I mean, because right now you got millions of people that turn on their apps and they Uber, they Lyft, and they're making money for their family right now. If Waymo and these other, automated driverless systems take over, you're talking about millions of people who are losing their earning power. And I just don't think that we are really thinking about that. This is another future conversation. 10, a decade, 20 years from now, they're going to be talking about this right here, right? And as sure as you're going to have other people saying the same thing I'm saying right now. Robots should assist, not replace, accentuate our lives, make things easier, make things faster, but do not replace humans.
I think that I think that the argument that, with technological advancement will come some displacement is fair, but I think that you have to consider the technology that you're talking about. We have had, I believe, a number of discussions about how crazy fast AI is evolving. It's evolving so quickly that we are struggling to kind of get a handle on it. We are dealing with a system that you can't really like fully control. And I think that when you start to utilize something like that in order to replace human workers, that's something that might require some regulation, or at least, at the very least, do not create a job for an AI system or a robot without creating in tandem another workforce for the people that it is replacing to go into. And you there, I think that if you're going to do it, because we're never going to see the end of technological advancement at this point. Humans, we don't know how to live in a world without pending technological advancement. That's just what we've come to accept for ourselves as a society. We're not ever going to just press the pause button on technological advancement. So we might as well just accept that for what that is. But at the same time, we should be definitely ramping up, creating you know, new lanes, new roles, new positions, new jobs, new workforce areas for the displaced. If you are going to, remove all of your stock boys out of your store, what position within the company are you going to pipeline them into so that they don't lose their livelihood? Like, I don't know why that's not an option. And I get that the entire point of maybe automating a system is for the company to save some money. So why would I create a new role for them to fill because I'm trying to save money? But at the same time, it just you don't have a choice but to. Because I don't believe that it's fair for somebody who has not had the same access to education or the same access to opportunity to just not, so one day look up and realize that it's something that has no family to feed is more valued than I am. Like, I think I spoke about this before, but I do think as a society, as humans, we have become so comfortable with removing ourselves from the idea of humanity that we don't even stop and think about how we are removing people from the simple ability to be able to feed their family. That's a big deal. That is something that we should all care about and be concerned about. We are so excited and so willing to be competitive with China or Japan or whoever else because they're on the curve of this whole AI robotic thing. Cool, good for them, great. It's people over there hating life right now because they cannot feed their family because of the consequence that comes with not prioritizing humanity. Why do we ever want to emulate that? Why do we ever want to be just like that? Why are we so comfortable with rejecting the idea of humanity because we want to be able to compete with China? I don't give a damn about China. China don't give a damn about us. What I give a damn about is American people being able to feed their family at the end of the day. For the uneducated and those who lack the opportunity to be educated properly to go into those software development fields or to be able to fix or be a technical person to fix the robot. Not everybody is good at that kind of stuff. So what do they do? Where do they go? What opportunities do they have to be able to do what should be a human right, which is to be able to take care of their family because they're able-bodied and they're willing to do the work? What do you tell somebody? How do you tell that person to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, as Republicans love to say? How do you say that to that person who you just took their job from them and gave it to a robot? What do you say to that person?
The same thing that they always been saying, Raven. And here's what's interesting about this conversation. You're right. I think the average person does care about the humanity and that sort of thing. But what have we spent the last few podcasts talking about? Billionaires, the billionaire class. They don't give a damn about you. We've been saying this from the beginning that these billionaires, these people who own these corporations, if you've ever been laid off around Christmas from a company, you know and understand that they don't give a damn. You are a you are a number on a spreadsheet. And when it comes down to the bottom line or the bottom line gets chosen every single time. And that is why I'm saying why there's a reasonable conversation about this debate that Nathan brought up. Because again, you're talking about capitalism, you're talking about greedy millionaires and billionaires, and they're not going to sit there and be talking about the humanity that you're talking about, Raven. Yeah, that's nice. You know, the small mom and pop business owner from around the way, they might be like that. They might care about, the young high school kid that they're hiring and bringing in and giving a job. But
Or
look, these big, yeah,
retirees retire and then go back into the workforce all the time because they can't afford to be
well, we
retired. How do you
well we
tell
know we
that
don't.
person to go back to go back to school and become a software developer or something, or an IT person? How do you say that to them?
You don't, and you don't tell them that, and you don't feel sorry for them, and you say my bad, and by the way, we're going to cut your social security. These are the
Crazy.
conversations. These are we're sitting here acting like these aren't conversations that we are having right now, that are not going to be exacerbated by technological advancements that are absolutely going to eliminate jobs from the workforce. And if you are expecting the millionaires and billionaires to feel a shred of humanity or decency, I'm asking you, where are you getting that from? Because where are they currently showing that? And what would make you think that they would care anything more about, like, well, they ought to make a job for somebody else if the robot is going to replace them? Says who? Like, in what world do you know that these CEOs are operating from that kind of compassion, that they're going to say, yeah, you know what, the right thing to do is this robot is going to replace this person, so let me find something else for them to do? No.
And
Like,
that's why
what?
you got to get the government involved to force
Yeah.
the regulation, because Phil and a lot of Republicans, they got this view
As
that
Ronald Reagan once said, "There you go again."
yeah, I'm gonna pull you into the conversation, like Phil. And if I'm wrong about this, just let me know. But from what I'm
Guilt by
hearing from you, Phil,
association. Once again,
it's
Phil's the
kind of
whipping
like
boy.
you believe
Yeah, sure.
that the heads of these big corporations just love the little guy so much that they're gonna do the right thing. History has not shown us that. If they're not forced by the federal government, which is part of the reason why we see this current administration attacking the federal government, they don't want the oversight and regulations. They want a robber baron
Right.
situation where they can do whatever they want to do, and you just have to live off their good graces. That's what they're trying to create. And you got some idiot black folks out there that think it's funny until it comes back on you. But yeah, history has not shown us that you can trust the billionaire or the ownership class. In some cases, the government needs regulations to protect the people from capitalism. From capitalism, because unfettered capitalism, they'll do anything to you. They'll serve you up anything in your water because it makes money, right? No, we have to have regulations to slow them down a little bit. Yeah, make money, but you don't have to make all the money or poison all of the water as you're making your money. It's the same thing with this. So we are ahead of the game, yeah, everybody. We're having a future conversation today, right? This conversation will be had in the decades to follow, but we're kind of like pioneers in this space having it today. So I appreciate it. Phil is mad.
I'm not
Yeah.
mad. What are you talking
Oh,
about?
okay.
I was teasing.
I was reading the text. Okay. All
However,
right.
have we gotten to the last comments end of the show, or are we not
Yes,
there
we
yet?
are. Yep. Last comment. Speak now, forever hold your peace.
Yeah. All right.
Well, wait a minute. I did want to. You did have one more thing on tap that I
I did.
would like for us to,
Yeah, I was cutting it off for the
because I
sake of
think.
time, but if you guys got
Oh,
time,
okay,
let's
all
get
right.
into it. Well, what was the topic?
Well, I thought you were going to ask about Ramaswamy for governor, and I thought that was an interesting. I thought that was an interesting topic.
Yeah, let's get into it. Yeah, so Vivek Ramaswamy has put his hat into the ring. He's already got two major endorsements, one from President Donald Trump and the other from Senator Bernie Moreno, who is yet to hold a town hall here in the state of Ohio, if I'm correct about that. Looks like he's got a lot of momentum. He's already saying some very Trumpian things, like he wants to change the name of one of the Great Lakes and name it after the state of Ohio. Weird. But overall, what's your thought process? Do you think that Vivek Ramaswamy would be good for Ohio?
I don't think he would be good for Ohio, and in fact, I'm going to go out here and make an early prediction. I'll probably be wrong on this, but I'm going to make my bold prediction now.
Okay.
Is that Vivek Ramaswamy will not even win the Republican primary for governor in
Mm.
Ohio? That he will get beaten by Dave Yost, and here's why. And Ann Coulter told Ramaswamy this on his very own podcast. Ann Coulter told Vivek Ramaswamy that she loves his policies, but she would have never voted for him as president because he was of Indian descent. This is why Vivek Ramaswamy is not going to win the Republican primary in Ohio, is because, and even Ramaswamy had to admit himself when he was running for president, that he underestimated These were his own words on his own podcast. I encourage people to go out and look it up. That he underestimated the amount of racial animus that existed within the Republican Party. And here's why he won't beat David Yost, even though he's got Trump's endorsement, which is despite what might be out there, is not the magic elixir in every case. Is that Dave Yost is pretty Trumpian himself. You know, if you've listened to him, he's kind of been lately towing the MAGA and the Trump line here in Ohio. And I think that there are enough people who probably think like Ann Coulter and a few other things that Ramaswamy has said, and the fact that he was, attached with Doge, that if you're looking for a MAGA alternative because you feel uncomfortable voting for Vivek Ramaswamy, Dave Yost, a Caucasian Republican man with great name recognition and a long history of holding office here in Ohio, is a perfectly acceptable Trump alternative for you if you have difficulty swallowing Vivek Ramaswamy. So that's why I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I don't even believe Ramaswamy wins the Republican primary in Ohio. I think Dave Yost beats him.
I'll go next. As a Kentuckian, so I'm going to speak on your guys' just the process of the Republican parties, of how you guys have said, certain people have not been nominated for positions, like Byron Donalds, who is running for governor in Florida, and Vivek Ramaswamy, who was supposedly with Doge, and then there was a mishap between Elon and Vivek, so that's why these are chess pieces that are moving, and and the reason why Vivek, in my opinion, will win the governor of Ohio is because he's going to energize the young voter base by going on podcasts, by doing all these things that he's going to, the Republican Party, the youth Republican Party, the YR, the young Republicans right now are on this vigorous movement to energize the base. And if you've seen Donald Trump's numbers, if you look at it, he had a spike in 18 to 25-year-old voters. So if you look at the playbook that Vivek Ramaswamy is doing, he's following the playbook of Donald Trump's campaign to a T. Loud music, big chyrons, big party, big rollouts, podcasting. And he's doing this now. He's got a good head start. You don't see Yost out here social media presence. And I know that you're like, when you're talking about primarying, these are conversations that young Republicans are having with other young, vulnerable college people who are leaning Republican now. Let's not be naive and say that the majority of the tent, that people are coming to the Republican Party tent, and the youth are coming. So Vivek Ramaswamy is going to continue to energize the youth in his base and continue to hit Cincinnati and hit St. X and Moeller and all these GLS schools. These right-minded people going into college and all these places. I think he's pretty much got this one in the bag.
So you're talking about the same Vivek Ramaswamy that said young people shouldn't be able to vote until they're 25 because they're basically idiots. The same Vivek Ramaswamy who pretty much said that young people care more about what did he say? Zach on Saved by the Bell versus what was the versus Screech? I mean, this guy has insulted young people in pretty much every way you possibly could as a candidate. And they're supposed to be excited for him, maybe in Republican circles.
Okay, but when you're saying when you hear Democrats say that, but then you have a chance to go and hear Vivek speak on on his favorite podcast, on that person's favorite podcast, and get to analyze their opinion on their own, instead of having mainstream media and people in the lesser popular Democratic Party. It's not very popular to be a Democrat right now. So whenever you're talking about young, independent-minded voters who are not swaying either way, and you're going to reach them, and you're seeing the polls say it's 27% people to affiliate themselves and are happy with the direction of the Democratic Party. And you see these people, whenever you have Charlie Kirks and all these people, and I'm telling you, the young Republican Party, if you look at how they're moving right now, and then you go look at the young Democrats, how they're moving right now, it's a completely different way. So, I mean, with that being said, yeah, I agree. Well, you can say the same Vivek Ramaswamy that said all that kind of stuff. It take him to go on Joe Rogan and say, I'm sorry, I didn't say that. I need y'all to go vote for me. And Joe Rogan get on there and say, yeah, man, I think he'd be a great job. Well, Yost will be like, I'm not going on no Joe Rogan podcast. And then you'll see him go straight through the finish line with ease. Like run through it.
I disagree. I disagree. I think that young people have a lot longer, whether they're Republican or Democratic at all. Young people in general just don't respond well to be insulted. I don't believe that they're going to overlook that in order to vote for a candidate who has spent quite some time insulting them. I just don't see that happening.
Look at Donald Trump. He insulted everybody. He insulted every person, and he.
But he also has white supremacy on his side, so that's a little bit different.
And I'll say this too about the young Republican movement that I see. It's a multicolored rainbow that doesn't see color. So I'm saying this with love. If the Democratic Party still plans on running on identity politics in the future, it's going to get real bad for you because the tent is more welcoming on the Republican side right now for all than the Democrats.
Okay.
I didn't know we had moved into comedy hour. I didn't realize we had moved into comedy hour, Nate. Man, that was a good one, Tarris. Boy.
Yeah, we shall see. I mean, we'll see whether the Republicans can keep together this new big tent and all these new black and brown people. We'll see. They're new with it. We'll see. What's your take, Phil? What do you think about Vivek for Ohio? Good idea?
I think that he, much like, say, Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, reflects the principle that someone who is very intelligent, highly educated, and very successful very often doesn't know right from wrong. It's no guarantee that they're going to do what's right. These guys have shown they're as smart as they are, well educated as they are, that they are willing to do what is wrong or support what is wrong if it's in their own self-interest. So he's just one of those.
Yeah, I'm inclined to believe that Vivek is gonna, what Kevin said. I'm inclined to agree with him, but I'm also inclined to agree with Tarris in the sense that this is new territory. These podcasts, they do have an impact. Young people, do they vote traditionally in Ohio primaries? I haven't looked at the numbers, but just based upon the history, probably not. So I don't know. We shall see what happens. We shall see what happens. It's going to be very interesting. I don't think any Republican would be good for Ohio. Ohio needs a Democrat governor to balance out the domination that the state that the Republicans have in the lower chamber here in the state of Ohio. We just need some balance. It's just too much Republican domination. So wherever there's Yost or Ramaswamy, I don't think either one of them will be good. But it'll be interesting. You guys will give me something to think about. It'll be interesting to see what happens in that primary. I mean, because we're in new territory, right? We keep saying about this has never happened before. We've never seen this before in terms of the world of politics. So let's see what happens with Vivek Ramaswamy. And I do think it's interesting he's picking up with the whole changing the Great Lake after Ohio. He's just kind of playing that obviously playing that Trump playbook. It's like, oh, you like that? Well, I'll give you some too. We're going to take over the Great Lake. I don't know enough about the Republicans. I'm not close enough to know whether that's actually, I don't know, penetrating or currying any favor with them at all. I have no idea. But I do know he's a brown man in a party that ain't necessarily for brown people. So we shall see what happens. We shall see.
Yeah, well, one thing he certainly does have the money. That's not going to be a challenge for him all, and we know how big of a factor that politics. So we'll see if the green can overcome the brown skin and the new rainbow Republican Party that the terrorists believe exists. We shall in the primary. I'm skeptical.
You're in and out. Your audio is in and out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just saying I'm skeptical about whether or not Ramaswamy can come up out of that. So
I
we,
saw that interview. I thought that Ann Coulter she was straight up, told him straight
as
to his
she
face.
is.
Yeah,
Ann Coulter don't she ain't perping.
yeah.
She lets you know exactly where she stands.
And what I thought was interesting, he was not prepared for it. He really didn't have a response. I'm like, okay, interesting. So you're right. It will be interesting to see if there's a lot of Ann Coulter type Republicans who like, yeah, I like you, but I don't like you that much. I'm going with Yost, right?
Yeah, and like I said, Yost is an acceptable. I think if you feel uncomfortable with Ramaswamy for whatever reason, Dave Yost is you're not getting if you are a MAGA person and you're a Trump guy, even though he didn't get Trump's endorsement, it's not for a lack of trying. I mean, Yost has definitely kind of let you know that he is in the Trump camp and some of the things that he has said and he's done. So he's a perfectly acceptable alternative if you feel at all uncomfortable about voting for Vivek Ramaswamy. You certainly won't have any problem pulling the lever for Dave Yost if you're a Republican in
But will,
Ohio.
but will the cult just follow the leader? Like if Donald Trump says, "Look, I'm endorsing Vivek," how strong is that going to be with Republican primary voters here in the next year or two? So
Well,
it'll be
again, you
interesting.
got to think about Vivek has said you remember he got expelled from Doge because of the comments that he made, pretty much insulting the working class. A lot of working class Americans. People are not going to forget that. Just because Donald Trump look part of that Donald
But I thought
Trump
he was
wanted to
already
get.
out when he made those comments. Like he had already left Doge.
Nah, that was not. That was probably. I mean, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think that was primarily when Trump banished him from Doge and sort of sent him back to Ohio and told him to run for governor because he kind of wanted to distance himself from
Yeah.
those comments because Ramaswamy was talking about Trump's base, was talking about his supporters, and then he's talking about bringing in immigrants and stuff from other countries that don't line up
Yeah,
with
yeah, that's right.
that doesn't line up with the MAGA line, and so people are not going to forget about that. And if I'm Dave Yost, those are absolute. And Yost, I think, is already kind of
Oh yeah, you got to
touched
play
on some
into
of
it.
those things. Like those are absolutely things that I'm going to use if I'm Dave Yost to use against him to take him down. So Ramaswamy has had no shortage of self-inflicted wounds that he's placed on himself that I think a savvy politician like Dave Yost will use in a primary. And this is why if I was putting my money down today in the Republican primary, I would be putting my money on Yost despite the Midas touch of Donald Trump and his endorsement. I'm going to put my money on Dave Yost.
Well, folks, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. Has anybody else got anything else they want to say? Speak now.
Phil's got his final. Phil's got something, right?
I, I thank you, Tarris. I just would encourage any of you listening or on the crew, if you haven't heard it, to listen to the interview that I today with Steve Witkoff. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. He is the Trump's envoy to kind of Ukraine, Russia. He actually has no foreign
Right.
policy experience. I think he was just a real estate developer. But he was interviewed today about the whole Russia Ukraine thing, and he said some things that I think we ought to really, really listen to. He's talking about this situation where we all know Russia, invaded Ukraine, and he goes, you know, I've never seen any dispute where there wasn't fault on both sides. Okay. Then he said, and there are parts of Ukraine that people are Russian speaking and really would like to be part of Russia. Now, this is pretty much the same reasoning that Hitler used to take over the countries around him when he started. Oh, I want to free these German people, these Germans, they're German speaking, this and that. And they really want us to do this. And I just think everybody should be aware that how things are changing now in our country's foreign policy. We are no longer going to be part of the free world or the leader of the free world. We are moving toward an alliance with people like Vladimir Putin and Erdogan and the guy in, I think it was named Hungary, Orban. This is where things are moving in this country. I just think everybody ought to be aware of it.
Duly noted.
I got
Uh,
something. I
yeah.
usually have something. I got some good news, really good news. This past couple of days, Andy Bashir and the Kentucky Senate and the House pass a Senate Bill 22, which allows barbering the ability to go mobile. And it's been a long time coming in Kentucky, and we've been working toward that legislation, and now it's passed, so I get to expand my business. So I'm just really happy about that. So I just wanted to share that really good news here on Hot Mic.
Good news. Glad to see it, man. Make money, make money. Good. Nothing wrong with that. Well, with that, everybody, thank you for being here. I know you're all busy. I really appreciate your time. To the audience, have a great Tuesday and a great rest of your week. We're planning to be back with you on Friday at 1 p.m. Until then, take care of yourself and the people around you, and we'll talk real soon. Have a great day. Thank you.